like we have a vast majority of individuals from the data science and data analyst team. So thank you all for participating and joining us today, as well as a pretty good set of marketing folks joining us as well. So thank you everyone for joining us as well. Now, first of all, thank you all for attending this presentation. Today, we're going to learn about Mode Analytics and how we help our customers learn more about their own business, and essentially with our cloud-based analytics platform. Now, to really kick this off, our platform has been validated by some of the most disruptive tech startups out there, organizations like Lyft and Patreon, and even some of the most established individuals like Ab and Bev, which is Anheuser-Busch, and even VMware. And these are just to name a few. They work with us because we keep these organizations competitive in a world where the speed of analytics and the analytic teams really means the difference between success and failure. And we've been able to earn their trust, mainly because of our cloud-first approach, which essentially is overcoming the top 3 challenges that most data teams are struggling with every single day. And it really starts with research is not linear. Answering complex questions often means starting over and over and over again, and new data leads to new questions. And if you're planning on finding the right answer, your data investigation period is most likely going to be pretty iterative. Now, during this deep investigation stage that we all may be undergoing, usually there's not just one tool that's used. Many times it starts maybe in SQL, but then it'll probably shift to Excel. Maybe you'll load some data into a notebook, push things into GitHub, visualize it, and then share it out with stakeholders. And this process, unfortunately, can be a bit long, it can be convoluted, and sometimes really takes away people from solving real business problems. And it's a puzzle of inefficiency that everyone just got used to, and there really hasn't been a better way until now. And lastly, analysts and business users have a very different workflow when you look at what they do. Loading data into a BI tool today often yet requires a whole nother tool. I mean, Tableau was purpose-built for business users, just like Jupyter notebooks were built for data analysts. They're purpose-built for a reason. And this is like fitting 2 different puzzle pieces from different puzzles together, yet it might work, but it may not work very well. And teams are looking for solutions that can support both an analyst and a business user all within a single seamless tool, while respecting the persona and the needs of both of those. Now, Mode was able to answer both parts of this BI and analytical puzzle, where we provide the platform where an analyst can answer complex business questions, and we can empower a stakeholder to answer their own, all in the same platform. Our cloud analytics platform, it combines a hosted SQL editor and Python and R notebooks, all within a seamless single workflow. And for our business users, we provide your traditional dashboards with optional embedding into internal web apps. Think of like a Salesforce, and even drag and drop exploration tools for ad hoc analysis, all for stakeholders to be able to answer their own questions. And our platform is powered by what we call Helix. This is a state-of-the-art in-memory engine that can visualize up to 2,000 times more data points than your industry average analytic platform today. Now, Helix works by being able to pull that data from your query and essentially load it into a backend. And this is essentially allowing us to get past browser limitations, being able to visualize upwards of 10 gigabytes of data at a time or per query. And we put these 2 workflows into one platform so users can iteratively investigate their data and self-service reporting tools for business users. And it really all starts with the SQL editor, where you can write your SQL queries, plot your results, and even share everything via URL. Since it's cloud-based services, you can put a URL in a Google Doc and share it out. There's no need to save anything onto a physical local desktop anymore. You have shareable notebooks where analysts can work in SQL, R, and Python all in one place without having to jump between a Jupyter notebook or RStudio, MySQL, or any other tool. And we have reports and dashboard building tools for creating your bar charts, scatter plots, and even visualizations with the ability to share right from the same platform. And tied in with our exploration tools, this helps business users be able to review and modify reports with similar functionalities like graph builders that are out there in common spreadsheet tools, all without the need of knowing SQL or even having any coding experience, and without impacting the underlying query. And to go with our exploration, we have calculated fields, which is going to add Excel-like calculation functionality that adds columns of data aggregations like maybe a count or sum, being able to reuse the existing query you've already pulled, essentially reducing your database load. And lastly, we have our embedded visualizations. Take the work you've done, those beautiful reports and charts, and productize it yourself. Give it to your customers by presenting your own reports on external sites and even web apps. And what does this really mean? Well, with Mode's platform, you're going to benefit from a solution that's not only fast and complete, there's no more jumping back and forth across separate tools. It's going to be flexible and familiar. We're providing support for the most common analytical languages that many are already accustomed to, and connections to many data frameworks like Snowflake and so forth. And finally, Mode is very collaborative and centralized, and that's one of the cores of it. Everyone's work sits in one place, which we can share and it can be reviewed. Now, how to leverage Mode? Well, there's several ways that you can leverage Mode to grow alongside your organization. For example, things like product analytics, getting insight into how users are behaving with maybe your product or your site, or customer life cycles, and understanding sales funnels, customer growth, and even retention. And maybe even from a product management perspective, analytics for prototyping, where product teams can actually use Mode to guide product development. Now, we've kind of covered Mode from a high level perspective. What I want to do is transition to show you a demo and how the platform can essentially benefit you and your teams. So let me switch this over. So this is Mode's advanced analytical platform. To start, when a user logs in, they're going to land on this Discover page. This is a great starting point because it gives users resources to build off your first report based on these templates. From the Discover page, you also have Now Live. These are all our new articles, blogs, posts, and even release notes, as well as for new users, getting started videos that are really easy to follow along to get accustomed to the platform. And then if there's any users that want to level up their skill, we provide complete complimentary and very good SQL and Python trainings within our platform as well, as users want to level up that skill. If you're looking for documentation within the platform, we have this option here where documentation is right here within the platform, but also you have the ability to chat with support right from here. And this is going to help in case you have any kind of break fix type issues, but also the most important part of our support teams is they're highly skilled in SQL, Python, and R. So if you have a query that's having performance-based issues, you can call in and they'll help you tune up that query that improve the performance of how it's working. Over here on the left side is our navigation pane. This is essentially where your reports will live over at the home area. Explorations we're going to cover at the end of the demo to round out our story. But then we're going to be covering, for example, our collections and our definitions. Now, just starting off with personal, this is a collection that's personal to the individual. Any report that you create initially will land within your personal collection. Nobody in the organization can view what's within your personal collection unless you explicitly share it out or you move it out to a public collection with other users or groups. My work is every single report you've ever created, no matter if it lives in your personal collection or not, giving you the ability to identify where your reports are living and being used. Now, moving on down here, this is very self-explanatory. Start reports, any report that you go to pretty often, you'd probably want to start and get to pretty quickly, as well as recently viewed or just any of the reports you've previously seen in the past will show up here for easy access. Collections are essentially, some people like to think of them like Slack channels. They're essentially groupings of reports where you can typically set them up to be specific to a category, maybe a department or a specific project. You could add governance to these collections, essentially limiting access to the reports. So for example, like our marketing teams, you guys may have your own reports. Well, you'll be able to lock that down so only the marketing teams have access to that. Now, from a definitions perspective, definitions are another huge benefit that Mode provides, because if you've ever shared out any SQL queries and anything changes, or maybe the user adjusts the query themselves and it breaks, it's always having to go back and figure out what broke. And this becomes more of your single source of truth, where we can provide you a definition name that you can define, and there'll be a longer defined query associated with it. So a user just has to run the definition name as opposed to running an entire query. It also gives your admin teams the ability to manage these queries from here, being able to make updates right from the definitions area, and it'll apply to any of the definitions that are used by those users. Now, the next step, I want to start creating our next report. So for today's demo, what I'm going to do is play out the role of a junior analyst, and I'm just going to answer a couple of ad hoc questions that have come in. I'm going to create a report from scratch and essentially try and show the speed to insight the tool can provide by being able to pull data, visualize, and share that out within one platform. So to start off, we'll click on the plus sign up here, and this will create our first report. And this is going to take us to the report creation screen. And this is where you can seamlessly stitch your Python, your SQL, your visualizations all up into this report builder up here. The database dropdown here gives you the access to any of the data warehouses you may have already configured, as well as our Mode Public Warehouse, which is just our community warehouse for test data. Once you've selected the warehouse, the schema browser lets you see all the databases as well as the tables and the attributes within these tables to ensure that you're looking at the data before you start querying from it. Here in the center, this is Mode's web-based SQL editor. This is where it all really begins. This is where the analyst is going to write your SQL queries. It's going to contain a number of components that are similar to desktop SQL clients, so it should be very familiar, as well as it's powered by ACE. So if you're used to any of the ACE keyboard shortcuts, that's going to be a great benefit for you as well. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy and paste a very simplified select statement. What's happening here is instead of referencing the table, we're referencing the definition name. As we spoke before, these definition names have associations of queries tied to them. So if we click into it, you'll see that this is the defined query underneath the definition. So users no longer have to copy and paste this entire query. It's just a matter of leveraging that definition. Now, once this data loads, it's important to note that when we mentioned Helix, this is what's kicking in. So Helix, our in-memory data engine, is essentially there to be able to help visually explore large data sets and even perform large-scale operations much faster with a lot less database load. And this is essentially going to be relevant for complex pivoting and filtering use cases that make up the bulk of the analytic process. Now from here, let's build our first chart. Now, we do have the option to come up here and choose, for example, a quick chart. So if you already have a shape and you know what you want to do with the data, you can choose your set boundaries of the quick chart that you want to use. But if you want to explore the data a little bit more flexibly, without the limitations of these charts, that's where this Visual Explorer comes in. And that's what we're going to use today. Now, to answer our first question that came in, what sales region is contributing the most sales? So based on the data that I have, I'm going to want to create this visualization. So to start off, all I'm going to do is just label my report. And here, to get the sales contribution, it's a matter of pulling your dimensions and measures in very simply. So we can pull in our data, and you'll be able to define how you want the data field to really be set, whether it's by date and times, whether you want date parts. For our example, we're just choosing month to segment our time frame. Now we need sales, which is going to be down here. And now, based on pulling those two fields into our chart, we haven't even selected the kind of visualization we want, but based on the grammar of graphics, a line chart has been defined for us. Now, because we want region as the primary, we can start looking at how we want to visualize region. This doesn't make sense, but you can see that the region is inside the pop-up. You have these different options, for example, whether you want the text overlay, whether you want the size, whether you want the size, or leveraging color. And color separation turns out to be the most appropriate one for this graph. And at this point, we can even adjust the visualization whether we want to use something else, like maybe just a bar chart. Now, the next step, as we're finalizing this chart, we see that we have sales data. So we need to format this. It's as simple as going to the format portion and then selecting the field. So any field you add to your chart as you're building it up, it'll show up here under format so you can manipulate how you want this presented. So here we can very simply change this to total sales. And because these are currencies, we can very easily go down to number formats and make changes for our currency down here. So this will change the currency for the title. And then we also have the pane in the center where we can change the currency really quickly. And as we hover over one of the bars, we can clearly see that now we have our total sales tied with our currency symbol. Now, as you can see in just a few simple steps, using our drag and drop interface, I literally went from SQL to a visualization very simply in a very simple workflow. And customers have told us how powerful this is and how efficient this workflow is, mainly because we're going straight from SQL to an answer very quickly, no matter what kind of data you're going to get. Now, the next step is we want to answer the next question, which is not going to be relevant to the data that we're looking at, is how long are users staying on our website, which is going to require a whole new query. So here, we're going to enter a new query, and you can have as many queries as you need to build out the final report that you're going to create. Now from here, I'm going to copy and paste the query for our sessions information from our website, and we'll run this. Now, what we're trying to do here, as we're trying to understand user behavior on our website, most likely we're going to need a histogram, and we're going to probably need to go through Python for that. So as you can see, we have our notebook here. As we're entering into our notebook, notice that the two queries on the left are piped in as index 0 and index 1. So I have access to the full data sets to be able to manipulate it with Python. We also have access to supported libraries. So we support dozens of libraries, as you can see here, NumPys, Panda, as well as if you see or don't see any specific library that you're looking for, we can also pip install them into the session as long as they're internet facing. Now, if you're looking to use R versus Python, we can also, you can switch it up from here. So we support Python 2.7 and 3.7, and you can switch it over to R right here as well. Python 3 Edge is more of a staging area for newer libraries for individuals to be able to test those queries out there. Now, to speed things up, what I'm going to do here is copy and paste my code. I just want to walk you real quick through what's happening here. So all we're going to do is essentially import these two libraries. We're pulling our data set 1, which is our query 2. This is our website data. We're just adjusting the data types for these two fields, and we're going to create a histogram based on the session duration so we can look at how long people are spending on our website. By pressing the play button, what happens is that only one cell will be run within the notebook. As you can see, we got the visualization right from here. If I did want to run every single cell within my notebook, you would run all, and it would asynchronously run them. You can start adding different cells if you need more. You can move them around. As you can see, it's pretty flexible. You can remove them. You can even fold these and even freeze them. So in case you're troubleshooting and you want to skip a specific part of your code, you can as well. Now, we have our visualization from Python. All we have to do is click on this button to add it to the report. Now, the final step here would be to finish finalizing this report. So if we go back to our report builder, run our queries and make sure everything comes in nice and fresh. And what we're going to see is that our Python output has been put into our report. Our previous visualization is also here as well. So it's as simple as clicking in and having it come in. And then once you have all the pieces of your visualizations within your report, this is where you can start customizing things. You can start moving things around to make it a little bit more appealing to what you're trying to visualize. You can adjust the different heights, as well as if you're looking to adjust different things like themes, you can add subway themes, and these are part of our default themes. You also have the ability to create your own custom color palette. So if your organization is looking to customize the color palette, so you can see we have a bunch of different options here that have been done previously, but that gives you that flexibility to customize the look and feel to your brand. We can add additional text as well. For example, if you want to add descriptions. That way, if you need to add additional context to your report, you can, as well as being able to have full access to the HTML layer. Now, the really cool thing here is that this lets you customize it any which way you want. You can leverage JavaScript and CSS to really start tailoring this. We have a gallery that gives you a ton of great examples that you can just click in, and it provides you all the instructions to essentially visualize and use any of these. We'll just take the heat map as an example, where once the heat map's loaded here, you'll be able to see it, and you'll have the option to either copy the HTML out to put into your HTML layer, or you can even click on Powered by Mode. And this is going to open up the actual report, which you can clone into your account and manipulate, or you can go in here and start looking at the details. For example, the style sheets that were added or the configuration. So it really exposes a lot here in regards to trying to help customize additional visualizations. Now, the last feature I wanted to point out here is really going to be around our filters. So we were filtering based on regions. So if a stakeholder is looking at this report and instead of looking at every single region, they just wanted to look at one, this is where we can pinpoint specific filters and add them to the final report to give them the ability to really filter it based on whatever they're trying to look for at that time. So here we have some date and time thresholds we can set, as well as the region filter. Now from here, all we have to do is really rename this and save our report. So we'll name this Sales and Sessions and save. Now to share this with additional stakeholders or peers, all we have to do is go here to share. Now, we do have a couple of options from a sharing perspective where you can do internal sharing links, and these just require a log on into the Mode platform, and users will be able to interact with the chart as well. And we also have the ability to do external sharing outside of the org. We have the email option. So the email option will use our emailing system. It'll email out the reports. You can set a specific delivery schedule, as well as the assets that are tied to it. And we also have a Slack integration that's really good. You can set it right to the channel, send a message, and then of course, the delivery schedule can really help here, depending on the team, the type of report and the time frame. You can set your cadence, whether it's a monthly report that needs to run, whether it's weekly, or maybe if you need it even sooner. You can choose which method, so whether email or Slack, and then you can add the assets as well. Now, just to look at what the report looks like from a shareholder or a stakeholder perspective, we'll click on this recent run link, and this is what the report would look like when it's shared out to another stakeholder. Now, from this report, if somebody wants to dig a little deeper into the data, this is where we can go into the charts and really dig deeper into the actual items within the chart. So for example, if we click on any of these, you can get either view data, so you can look at the underlying data that's running that piece, or you can even drill into it and look at a specific area to look at that specific time frame, and then you can go back. But if you want to really dig deeper into it, there's an explore option. This explore option is going to take us back to that visual explorer, if you will. And if you remember, we were mentioning Helix. This is also where the power of Helix comes in, because this in-memory compute engine, this is essentially what's loading this data. Now, non-technical stakeholders will be able to explore and drill into this visualization, whether it's large or small, by easily just dragging and dropping some of these dimensions and measures. Excuse me. Now, as a stakeholder, if I wanted to manipulate this, even though it's part of a report, all I have to do is switch any of these items. So for example, if I'm more interested in channel sales versus regional sales, we can swap this out. And now I have a completely different chart. If I wanted to adjust this, maybe swap the axes around, I can as well. And none of this is impacting the underlying report as well. This is all running off of the in-memory compute engine. Now there's an additional layer here because, for example, let's say we wanted to do something additional, like add additional logic to this data set, and maybe create additional columns. We have the ability to do calculated fields on top of this data set without impacting the underlying query. By going to this summation button up here, we'll be able to add, and here we'll just do run sum for our running sum. But we have all the functions set within the box. So you can go in here and choose the specific function you're looking for. Like for us, we're looking for the running sum. And the tool is going to give you some examples that you can just copy and paste right into it and essentially tailor it to what you need. And what we'll do is we'll copy and paste this in and just tailor the order quantity to our specific table. So if we want total sales, It's important to note that we also have a validation function here. So for example, if you do have a typo, these things happen, it'll tell you you have something wrong, so you can go in and clean it up. Once I apply this and close, to apply this, it's as simple as dragging this in or maybe replacing some. Unless I wanted to have a comparison, now we can have a comparison of running sum versus total sales. If I'm done here, based on this exploration, because this is essentially a subset of that original report, I can save this exploration into my account and to be able to go back to it later, whether to share out, reuse, or maybe to explore further. And that's where you can go back here to your My Explorations, and you'll be able to get access to any of those explorations that you've previously saved. Now, once we've saved the exploration, the next piece here is really along the lines of embeds. As we're wrapping up, some organizations are looking for being able to either productize some of the data that they have, or maybe they want to add it to things like a Salesforce. And this is where the embedding comes in, where you'll be able to come in here and use either a JavaScript tag or a static iframe, and you'll be able to embed these into your internal sites like Salesforce. White label embeds are the external ones. More when we're talking about productizing those reports and charts, you'll be able to put this in any site that you want to be able to leverage the functionality of Mode and pass that on even to your customers, whether you're reporting on maybe their use of your own platform or any other. Now, just as an example of this white label embed, we had this Parch and Posey site that one of my colleagues had made a while back. It essentially is one of these embedded reports right here. So you can see that you can come in and view the details of this report, and you needed a log on to get in here. So this is an authenticated site. So that's kind of the down and dirty. That kind of wraps it up for the solutions demo. What I wanted to do now is just transition back. And as we're rounding out this webinar, I want you to know that Mode works with any ETL tool, essentially to create what we call the modular data stack. And it's a combination of data tools that are built around open source platforms that add to each other's strengths, including organizations like DBT, which many of us are familiar with, Fivetran, and others. And the benefit of Mode is that you control your data without having to lock you into any proprietary scripting languages or unique database structures, which essentially will limit access to your own data outside of that restricted platform. I want to say thank you very much for providing us this opportunity to be able to describe how Mode can replace that messy puzzle of analytic tools, all within a single platform for your entire analytics and BI teams. If you do have any additional questions, we do have hi@modeanalytics.com. Please feel free to reach out. And please don't forget, we have a survey at the end. We'd really appreciate it if you could fill those out. But at this point, we'd be open to going through any questions to see if we can answer any as we're wrapping up this webinar. Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. And if you do have any additional information that you need, please reach out to us. I give you back some time and have a wonderful day. Take care.